one of my heroes, as yours was Ronald Reagan. And the American people do not understand how miserable socialism was. I said to some, oh, I remember I was filling in for Dennis, and he said, Mark, what don't you like about the health care plan? I think it was a week ago. And I said, oh no, he said, what do you like about the health care plan? And I immediately said, nothing. And then he said, what don't you like? And I said, I don't have enough time to go over everything that I don't like, because socialism has never worked anywhere around the world. But yet people don't understand our history, our way of life, our values. We have to teach it to every generation. And that's why your outreach is so important. They have no idea. They have no idea what made this country great. So I love the story about that Ronald Reagan used to tell. A citizen calls up his local bureaucrat in the Soviet Union. And he says, when will I be getting my television set? And the bureaucrat says, why do you want to know when you're getting television set? Just tell me, when am I getting it? So he looks it up, and the bureaucrat says, in 10 years. So the citizen says, will it be coming in the morning or in the afternoon? And the bureaucrat said, why do you want to know whether it's coming in the morning or in the afternoon? And the citizen said, because the plumber is coming in the morning. I remember having my close friend Bruce Hershenson on. How many remember Bruce who ran for Senate? What a different country it would be if he had beaten Barbara Boxer. Actually, he was tied with her the weekend before. I was his chief surrogate speaker. I'd go out to events for him. And the weekend before, he was tied. But they said to us, it depends on how much George Bush the first loses by. If the campaign manager had said if he loses by fewer than 10, Bruce will win. Anybody remember how much George Bush lost California by? 14 points. Bruce only lost by 5. And if you remember, George Bush had given up on California. What a difference that made, so they could pour all the money into Barbara Boxer. But when I had Bruce on the show once, I said, do you think that God was involved in the founding of our country? And I had no idea if Bruce was religious or not. And Bruce said, Mark, did you ever think how young the founders were, and they got everything just about right? And that, when Bruce comes on, I always get an aha moment. But in this country, I try to teach the students that I have, you can be anything you want in this country within your God-given abilities. That's what makes this country so special. But yet a lot of people come here, as Dennis says also, as well as I do, they come here and try to replace the very thing they ran away from. It's just insanity. And Winston Churchill, if you remember, used to say, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the rest. We've never had, remember we played this clip on Dennis's show with Michael Moore. They asked him, you know, what society would you replace this with? And he said, we haven't created it yet. You know, we haven't figured it out. I'm paraphrasing. But our students don't understand our system either very well, obviously, if their parents don't. I tell this parrot story, see if I can remember it. A magician has a parrot on his shoulder, and the parrot is giving away all the tricks. You know, the cards are up his sleeves, and the rabbit is underneath his hat. And finally, you see the magician a few days later on a piece of wood. The ship is sunk, and the parrot is on his shoulder, and he's holding on to the piece of wood for dear life. On the first day, the parrot says nothing. On the second day, the parrot also says nothing. But finally, on the third day, the parrot says, okay, I give up. What did you do with the ship? And one of my lines that I always say on the air is that the students nor their parents understand that the government has no money of its own. We also always play this clip. You remember that clip when the first Obama campaign, and she said, Obama's going to buy her a house and pay her mortgage, put gas in the tank, and where's she going to get it from? Where's he going to get it from? His stash? We got a lot of work to do because they have no idea. But in my classes, like I would take minimum wage as a perfect example, and I'd say to the students, why are you in favor of raising the minimum wage? And you all want to say, as the gentleman said before, Neil I think it was, that we all do what's in our own self-interest. So I say, why don't you make it $20 an hour? Why don't you make it $1,000 an hour? Why don't you make it $1 million an hour? Did you ever think, Thomas Sowell's been on my show, of second stage thinking? What happens next? Where does the money come from? If the owner doesn't, has to pay you more money, maybe he'll lay you off, or give you fewer hours, or not hire your friends. And the problem is, when they hear that, they say, I never thought about that, because they've never heard our ideas. As the other speakers have said, our ideas win, but they've never heard them. That's why it's so important that you guys get out there. But of course, we have a leftist in the White House, And for months now I've been saying, there's one thing worse than incompetence, which it clearly has been, and that's being arrogant about your incompetence. And like you guys, I was never so depressed after an election after this. I posted on Facebook a few days later, I think there were 1,500 some odd days. I said, but who's counting? Well, the good news is we're at 1,470 when I filled in for Dennis last week. Yeah, I am counting, because I'm worried about the Supreme Court. I'm worried about foreign policy, because this guy has no clue. I've always said, whatever he screws up nationally, we can hope to fix that. But Iran with a nuclear weapon, North Korea threatening the coast of California, I don't need to go on with you guys. I worry much more about foreign policy. I'm hoping we'll be here. This guy has no idea about what evil is. You don't placate a bully. You don't negotiate with them. You show strength. If there's one thing people respect, it's strength, not weakness. And this guy probably, I said this on the air, Dennis is never as hard as I am on the president. I said that I'm convinced that this guy did not back up our four brave Americans. That he was the ultimate one who said no to save their lives, which you've never done in American history before. It's just outrageous. But they voted for him. So I had an author who was on in South Korea on the week before when I did Dennis's show. It was 3 a.m. his time. He wrote an article that I had talked about weeks before. As a public school teacher, I think it's time for us to stop supporting public schools. You can't tinker around anymore. We can't win that battle. So his title of his article was The Case Against Public Education. If you email me, I'll try to, I think it was American Thinker that it was there. It's hopeless. The unions control that place. They so indoctrinate those kids that when they come out, it's not a wonder that they're Democrats. It's a wonder that any of them are conservatives after all that schooling. So, you know, I'm sure a lot of you are well-meaning, and you know, you go to schools and you try to protect your kids and you try to find out what they're doing. We're going to lose that battle. Bill Ayers and Obama understood that years ago. And what my author said that was new to me a little bit, it's so easy to manipulate the system. And that's what they've done very well. So I just think whether it's homeschooling or private schools or maybe some charter schools, although those are public also, our support for public schools that sounds way out there, we're going to lose that battle. We're going to lose the battle for that generation. So no more tinkering in any way. By the way, one of the things that most depressed me, I understood the Hispanic community a little bit because Heather McDonald, I'm no fan of hers. She's out of the Manhattan Institute. She's always been on the opposite side of me on illegal immigration. But she wrote that in California, only 7% of the people voted against Romney. So only 7% of those people voted because of illegal immigration. This nonsense by the elitists in Washington that that'll save us is crazy. You know what they voted for overwhelmingly, why they voted for him? They wanted more stuff. They were like everybody else. That's pretty depressing. I get that. And then you have even Krauthammer, who I admire somewhat. The elite in Washington thinks if we beat the Democrats to giving amnesty, that we'll be better off. No, we won't. You're just getting more Democrat voters. Millions more to come for years. That's insanity. That's crazy. If ever given, I gotta watch my voice. I lost it last week on the show. I'm fighting something. I teased Mark that he gave it to me over the phone. But if ever given a choice between a Democrat and a Democrat, they vote for the real thing. They don't need us to be like Democrats. We got to stand on our values and principles and reach out so they know what our views are. But the group that bothered me the most was the Asian community, because I didn't get that. Because, you know, just take my son just transferred to UCLA. He was at Santa Barbara, and the Asians, there's a quota system against them. It may not be said, but it's very clear. And as a good conservative, I don't care if the whole school is Asian. The answer is not to have quotas. The answer is to do better, to reach their level. I always say as a teacher, the secret is high standards, high expectations, and strong discipline. It's not going down the level. Did you just see that? They just said women, you know, in combat. I mean, always the quest for equality, not for standards. Not that women can't do the job, but there are other issues. I didn't want to get into that now. But Henninger said in the Wall Street Journal, why did the Asians vote for Obama in such big numbers, 72%? And the answer was, what the Democrats never stopped doing was working on them and other groups 4 years ago. And they told them through emails and through meetings that we're evil and we're anti-minorities. And if you say it enough, and if your friends believe it, you believe it. And that accounts, and I believe that, that accounts for why we lost that battle. Our message, though, of course, cannot be as well as theirs is in sound bites, right? Hope and change, the rich are not paying their fair share. Ours is a much more complicated message to explain how the economy works. What's so great about capitalism? That I had a business and it will last for 20 years. If it fails, you start a new one. And I said to my students, I said, if you don't like the prices being charged, start your own business. And if that doesn't work, do 2 or 3 more. People love this ability in this country. They came here to be free and to start enterprises and not have a religion pushed onto them. It was all about freedom and about liberty. That's what makes this country so special. Not the government deciding what minimum, what wage that you should be paid by your boss, but millions of individuals do that every day by where they shop and whether that price is good or whether that product is not good. That's what makes the system work so well. But they have no clue in our educational system. So they've got to learn that we're not evil. And Mark asked me to mention some specific things that I have done. I ran for office years ago, and I ran for the state assembly, and I walked 15,000 households, as I remember. And midway through, I only walked Democrat households. Because what's the point of Republicans? It says Republican, they're going to vote for us anyway. So I walked Democrat households, and I'll never forget this story. One lady that I walked into, she said, she wouldn't let me talk. She just said, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? And when I said Republican, she slammed the door in my face. But as she's slamming the door, I got out the words, even though my opponent is for in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. And the next day, I had a call on my answering machine. And the lady said, the voice said anyway, it said, you probably don't remember me, but I'm the lady that slammed the door in your face. And you are going to be the first Republican I ever vote for in my life. So that reinforces what Neil said. You can make a difference, especially if they hear our views. I was written up that year. I got the highest vote of anybody in LA County above registration. My district had 30%. I walked the precincts, I got up to 42%. Our great Republican Party in California promised me money, never gave me money. That was Kevin McCarthy, I never forgot that. Mark, you'll be our sleeper. Don't go to the convention. I was selected to go to the convention. They never gave me a dime. It was all my own money that I raised. We might have won that race otherwise. So we got 42% above that in the 30% district. They wrote about me. How do you do it? Candidates would come up to me. You know what would happen? They'd say, Mark, how did you do it? And I'd say, you have to walk precincts and do the hard work. You know what they do then? They walk away from me. Because most people in life don't want to do the hard work. You guys are coming out here when you can have better things to do because you care so much about this country and you want to make a difference. But that's not easy. And most people don't want to do that. In anything in life, they always look for the easier way out. I understand that. And I spoke to the AME church, an all-black church here in Los Angeles. And they know, they love me. I'm not saying that, how many votes I got, but we got some votes during that campaign. But it's one by one. But some are hopeless. The only thing I'd say to Neil is some people are hopeless. You have to recognize where you have no hope. There are base people on both sides, including our side, that there's no way in the world they'd ever vote for the other side. And you have to recognize that even in your neighbors and relatives, let alone your relatives. Why, as Dennis says, you don't want to ruin a Thanksgiving fight, feast, and then all of a sudden the people are fighting. You don't want to do that. So you have to recognize who's open and who's not. And after a little while, you can tell if they just give you ridiculous answers, no matter what you say, I don't want you to waste your time. This was very sad. This just happened to me last week. I always say in the air, whatever happens, like the hometown buffet. I'll say his first name. Tommy is a gentleman who writes a magazine in Hollywood. Can't even remember the name. He came on one night with Kate Linder. Kate will be there Saturday night too. She's a soap opera star. I think I never watched soap operas. From The Young and the Restless. Anybody watch soap operas? She's Esther, the evil one. Anybody watch? I think it's Young and the Restless. Anyway, he came on with her one night and liked me so much on the show. He said, Mark, I'm going to publicize your show from now on every week. And he's been doing it every week. Now here's my monologues, which they're pretty conservative. And I knew during the campaign he didn't like Romney because something came up. But here's what I posted on Facebook. And I even thought that, I wondered, I just posted it this week when I heard, I didn't watch the inauguration like you. I don't watch Channel 247 anymore. I used to, and I'm a talk show host, so I get my news later on, I look on the internet. I can't take it anymore. I can't watch what they do. It's too depressing to watch the news. So here's what I posted. I find it sad that this is the first inauguration in my adult life that I am not watching or listening to. It is not his party affiliation that bothers me. I have watched and enjoyed the entire ceremonies of previous Democrats being sworn into office. I just cannot listen to him or watch him. Maybe it's because of what he is trying to do to my beloved country. All very sad. I think I got about 50 some odd reactions, and then Tommy posted something. I don't even remember what he posted. And people on my post, you know, people who reacted to me, were now letting him have it. See, we got to be careful how we do this. He was so insulted and hurt by it. I didn't write down what he wrote, but he announced to one of my staff he'll no longer be promoting the show because of the vile people that the group that I'm a part of, and I guess the group he meant was the Republican Party. He had told me privately once before as a kid he had heard the N-word. And so he said, I didn't vote for Obama, but you guys, you know, I'm paraphrasing, you're vile and what you stand for. It never dawned on him. See, that's why communication. When I did Dennis's show last week, I asked people, what's our biggest problem? And almost everybody agreed it was communication. Maybe we should buy, they said, a cable channel, maybe, you know, besides Fox, we should buy some newspapers. People had all kinds of ideas. But look at this. He didn't ask me. I would have watched Nancy Pelosi. I can never take her. One of my lines about her is, remember when Harry Reid had that idea that Romney didn't pay taxes, but he had an anonymous source? So I got on the radio that week and I said, I know who the anonymous source is. It's Nancy Pelosi. She finally read the 2,700 pages, and it was in the healthcare bill. That even pays taxes. So I wouldn't have watched Nancy Pelosi. I wouldn't have watched Harry Reid. Color has zero meaning to me. I love the quote that both Dennis and I use from Viktor Frankl. There are two races of people, decent and indecent. But he obviously, he's a black gentleman. He was offended by it. And he thought, oh, it must be because he's black. We got to get out there when people think this kind of stuff. This is very depressing. But they've done the job. They do the communication job much better than we do, right? We're not for the poor. We can't, you know, we want to go hungry at night. We can't stand blacks, you know. We're bigoted people. It's just outrageous. But that was pretty sad. I'm going to let, you know what? I let his post, it's still up on, if you look on Facebook, I left it up there so you can read what he wrote. I think if you befriend me or whatever, you'll see it there. Because I want him to think about it and calm. Oh, I didn't tell you this. He was on my show last Saturday night. He was in Seattle by phone with Kate Linder, the soap opera star, and two others, and I had some Hollywood people before that. You know what he wrote the week before this happened? Last Sunday? Mark, he's done this before. Mark is the absolute best talk show host in LA. So all of a sudden, a few days later, just because I wrote, offended him about President Obama. It's just absolutely crazy. I've said on the air, give me 9 Clarence Thomases and I'll be a happy guy. I don't care what the color is. We as conservatives are much less bigoted than they are. They're the ones that look at groups all the time. How many gays, how many blacks, how many this. We much more likely care about who you are as an individual, which is what makes this country so special. All right, I'm going to leave you with my New Year's predictions, and then I'll be done. This one is not mine. I stole it from someone else, and it's gotten around. People stealing it and saying it on their shows, but I even stole it weeks ago, but I said it early. President Obama will say he's had a real problem because he inherited a mess from his predecessor. Immediate predecessor. Oh, now you got it. I should say that. I should say that. Okay, I got to clarify that. This one, when I did this one on the air, my whole staff just put their hands in front of their face. After all, I'm on a Judeo-Christian station. I don't know what made me say this, but I said, this year Hillary will announce she will not testify because she's pregnant. But I made it worse as they were starting to look at me, and I said, and Bill immediately said, I did not have sex with that woman. I liked it too, that's why I said it, but I was figuring, the program director, I hope is not listening to this. Then you don't know this because what happened with the guns being listed, the LA Times is going to start listing all the Republicans in California. But don't worry, because it's a shrinking list. I'm sorry. And if I said this a year ago, now someone I think is proposing it. Isn't that amazing when you say things you think you're kidding around and then it becomes truth? And if you try to leave the state, they'll impose an exit tax. I said that a year ago at my predictions, and then someone proposed it this year. You can never go far enough in this state. And there's also one of mine from last year. Rick Perry will be, the governor of Texas, will be the new star of Jeopardy. He will know all the questions but forget the answers. And finally, I think it's my last one, Mayor Villaraigosa. This was, you know, that now that Kerry's going to become Secretary of State, they're going to have an opening in Massachusetts. So I proposed Mayor Villaraigosa get that slot. I always pick on him every week just about. Because what do senators do? They do nothing. And if there's anything Mayor Villaraigosa is good at, it's doing nothing. The easiest one is just the role of government, and that's what I do with the students. That, we as conservatives, we came here to get away. I said it before, came here to religious persecution, economic persecution. Our founders fled that kind of stuff because government was too big and in their lives. So we believe in government. Ronald Reagan said it right. Government is the problem, not the answer. I'm paraphrasing it badly. We believe, and the students really appreciate this. I say, remember the change, hope and change stuff? And they all love that kind of stuff. So I'll say to my students, what if the change was you lose your allowance? What if the change was your parents take you out of school? You have to ask that other question. But government, you want government as little as possible in your lives. You don't want your parents telling you what to do now that you're 18, 19, and 20. Why would you want the government to tell you what to do? That's what makes this country so special. That you have freedom, you have liberty. Millions of people have died. I told this story once when I had a television show. I had 4 or 5 panelists on from different countries. Russia, China, can't remember the other countries. And I just said, by the way, how many people would come to America tomorrow if I landed a cargo plane? Remember when the Iranians were saying death to America? I said on the air, I always had this vision. If we landed a plane while they were screaming death to America with their placards and said, you have one chance to come on this cargo plane to America. And I said, how many people would come to America? And I was surprised. All the panelists said 100%. I thought it was 40%, 50%, or 60%. And I love this story I heard on Bill Bennett once. There's this Chinese guy, I think he's on an island during World War II, but I could be wrong about some of the facts, except for this fact. He sees on a hill some soldiers come, he's stranded. He sees some soldiers coming over a hilltop or something, and he had all these fears who it was. And then he recognized it was the Americans, and he said, American man. He knew he was safe, because to this day we still represent freedom and liberty around the world. So I would say to those people, what makes a conservative is that freedom, that ability to be anything you want, to keep government out of our lives, that we get our God-given rights. What man can do, man can change. You don't want people telling you what to do. Young people really respond to that. Yeah, we can reach certain individual kids, but the task is too great because the unions control the public schools. One of my lines that I made up years ago I love, and they couldn't argue with me because I'm a teacher for all these years. I'd say if ever the goals of the unions and the children coincide, it's purely a coincidence. Because, and they always say, oh, for our kids. Not for the kids. It's for themselves. But here's a compliment I give to the unions. The job of the unions is to get the most money and benefits for their members. And they do that very well. They just lie when they say they care about kids. They don't care about kids. So I meant the monopolistic aspects of the school system make your job so tough. In my mailbox, they were always in dock. All the teachers, had to think a certain way. I'll tell you a quick story. When I first started teaching, they had their union meeting, they decided, in our lunchroom. So they said, you got to leave, Mark. Even then I was becoming a conservative and I was only 20. And I said, no. I stood up for myself. You guys will have to move somewhere else because this is the lunchroom. But if you see the stuff in the mailboxes, if you see the talk, I don't want to go into this. I got not renewed by a school district because they found out who I was, what my politics were. So it's overwhelmingly liberal and Democrat. One guy I met, Beverly Hills, that was the district I was at. One guy said, whispered to me, like this was communism. He whispered to me and said, Mark, it was in the parking lot, now that I think of it. What was that, the Bernstein Woodward thing? It was like Deep Throat. He says to me, Mark, I'm with you. What do you mean? He said, I'm a libertarian. And I said, you're a libertarian? And he was there 10 years. I said, how'd you get away with it? He said, they don't know. That's what I meant. Not that the kids can't be reached, but that it's so dominated, it's so controlled, they don't want to hear your ideas.